Machiavelli despised this quality. He understood that fortune favors the bold, and that those who wait for certainty are condemned to remain stationary, while others claim what they desire. The weak man clings to certainty as if it were a lifeline, yet the world offers no guarantees, only opportunities seized or lost. Fear grips him at every turn, fear of failure, fear of responsibility, fear of being exposed as flawed. His dependence on external guidance ensures that he is never the master of his own fate. He is always being led, never leading, always following, never decisive. This pattern is evident not only in monumental decisions, but in the seemingly trivial choices of daily life. Ask him where he wants to go, what he wants to achieve, or what he truly desires, and he hesitates. He deflects, mirrors, or abandons his own preference, terrified of drawing disapproval. In relationships, in business, in personal ambitions, he allows others to dictate direction. His existence becomes a reflection of the wills of those around him, rather than a projection of his own vision. Every decision he avoids, every choice he delegates, is a public announcement of his weakness. Machiavelli would warn that such men are dangerous to depend upon. In times of crisis, when action must be swift and uncompromising, they freeze, paralyzed by fear, waiting for others to act, for others to make the call that could determine life or death. Their indecision is not harmless. It exposes them as unreliable, manipulable, and unfit to command. For a man who cannot choose cannot lead, and a man who cannot lead cannot defend his own interests. The strong man, by contrast, understands that decisions define character. Even mistakes, when embraced with resolve, teach lessons and build strength in ways that hesitation never can. The bold act, the decisive commit, and the fearless pursue, knowing that the act of choosing is itself a demonstration of power. Weak men, in their flight from error, reveal their inadequacy. They hide behind delay, avoiding responsibility, and in doing so, broadcast to the world that they are unfit for influence, leadership, or respect. Strength, Machiavelli would insist, is the courage to decide even when certainty is absent, and the wisdom to move forward even when the path is perilous. Machiavelli's genius was not just in advising rulers, but in teaching us how to see through the illusions of men. Weakness, no matter how cleverly disguised, always leaks through behavior. The man who cannot control his emotions, the man who depends on validation, and the man who cannot decide without approval, all of them reveal themselves as weak, even if they cloak themselves in confidence. If you wish to be strong, you must hunt these behaviors within yourself and kill them before they kill your influence. Learn restraint when provoked. Learn self-reliance when tempted by applause. Learn decisiveness when faced with uncertainty. These are not just tactics. They are shields against manipulation, weapons against mediocrity, and foundations for power. The world does not respect the weak. It tolerates them, uses them, and discards them. Machiavelli's warning is simple. If you cannot master yourself, you will be mastered by others. Do not expose yourself through these behaviors. Instead, cultivate the opposite: composure, independence, and decisiveness. For in these, true strength is not only seen, but felt.
Throughout history, power has never been about appearance alone. It is about perception. Niccolo Machiavelli, the master observer of human behavior, taught us that men reveal their nature not in their words, but in their habits, reactions, and patterns of conduct. A strong man does not need to declare his strength. It emanates from him in silence. But a weak man cannot hide his fragility for long. His actions, often subtle and unintentional, betray him to anyone perceptive enough to see through the facade. In the ruthless game of life, these small signals matter. Leaders, rivals, and manipulators are always watching, waiting to identify the cracks in someone's armor. And the weak man, no matter how much he tries to conceal it, will always expose himself through certain behaviors. These behaviors are not accidental. They are rooted in insecurity, fear, and lack of discipline. Machiavelli would say, "Study them well, for to identify weakness is to know where power lies." Today we will examine 3 behaviors that instantly expose weak men. If you recognize them in others, you will know exactly how to assess their character. And if you see them in yourself, you will know what must be eradicated, because to carry them is to announce to the world that you are prey, not predator. 1. Overreaction to insults and challenges. The first and clearest signal of weakness is overreaction. Machiavelli understood that a man who cannot control his emotions has already surrendered control to others. The weak man takes every insult personally. He hears mockery where there is silence, feels attacked where there is indifference, and lashes out when provoked. To him, his pride is so fragile that even a whisper of disrespect feels like an existential threat. Consider what this means in the game of power. If your opponent knows that your pride is your leash, he will tug it whenever he wishes to move you. A skilled manipulator can guide such a man with nothing more than words, setting traps that he willingly walks into. The overreactive man exposes himself as a puppet because his strings are attached to his emotions rather than his reason. History is filled with examples of rulers and leaders undone by their inability to stay composed. A single insult, a single rumor, a single perceived slight pushed them into reckless action, and in their rage they revealed their true weakness, dependence on the approval and fear of others. Machiavelli would warn us that true strength lies in restraint, the ability to stay silent when others expect an eruption, the discipline to respond with calculation instead of impulse. In everyday life, the weak man cannot resist the urge to clap back, to make noise, to defend himself at every turn. He spends more energy trying to prove his strength than actually developing it. This is why Machiavelli would say, "Do not measure a man by his victories, but by how he handles offense." The strong man knows that silence can wound deeper than words, and patience can deliver justice more effectively than rage.
2. The need for constant validation. The second behavior that betrays weakness is an insatiable hunger for approval. The weak man cannot stand on his own. He trembles without the constant reassurance of others. He craves validation for his intellect, his abilities, his attractiveness, even his mere existence. Every glance, word, or gesture from those around him becomes a measurement of his worth. Without this external affirmation, he falters, unsure of his place in the world, his decisions, and his identity. Machiavelli understood that dependence is the foundation of vulnerability. The man who leans on others for confidence becomes infinitely malleable, easily controlled, and perpetually at the mercy of opinion. Those who need applause cannot act freely, for their actions are dictated by the whims of others rather than their own judgment. This craving for approval manifests in a subtle, almost constant servility. The weak man bends to the expectations of those around him, twisting his personality, opinions, and even principles to fit the desires of the crowd. He chases acceptance instead of earning respect. He smiles when he should stand firm, nods when he should dissent, and applauds what he secretly disdains. Each act of eagerness to please is a public declaration of weakness, an unintentional signal to those around him that he can be manipulated, flattered, or subdued. Machiavelli would warn that such a man gives power over himself to anyone willing to withhold or grant approval, a perilous gift that can only end in exploitation. In the modern world, this weakness is amplified to unprecedented levels. Social media has become a mirror reflecting both insecurity and dependency back to its users. The man who measures his value by likes, shares, or comments places his identity in the hands of strangers. A single negative remark can shatter his confidence, while a flood of praise can inflate his ego beyond reason. His sense of self becomes entirely externalized, subject to the approval or judgment of the masses. Machiavelli would have recognized this as a modern epidemic, a society of men who do not own themselves and therefore are owned by everyone else. The strong man, in stark contrast, draws his validation from within. He does not seek applause, approval, or recognition to prove his worth. He understands that the crowd is fickle, that cheers can quickly turn to jeers, and that external opinion is never a reliable measure of value. His confidence comes from discipline, achievement, and mastery over his own desires. He moves with certainty, even in silence, and does not need the validation of others to affirm his existence. The weak man, by constantly advertising his worth, reveals his insecurity as clearly as a soldier dropping his shield before battle. In chasing the approval of others, he exposes himself to control, manipulation, and defeat, while the truly strong man, self-assured and independent, remains untouchable, anchored by the certainty of his own command. 3. Indecision rooted in fear. The third and perhaps most revealing behavior of a weak man is indecision, paralysis born not of thoughtfulness, but of fear. The weak man cannot act without permission. Every choice feels like a potential trap, every step a risk he cannot bear to take alone. He hesitates, overanalyzes, and procrastinates endlessly, waiting for someone else to provide the path, to declare what is safe, to tell him that his next move will not expose him. When he finally acts, it is rarely from conviction. It is always borrowed courage, lifted from the confidence of others, as if he has no ownership over his own life.